Every time I beat a major boss, I can increase the number of summons by 1. To make this a little more interesting, I can only use summons to fight. I cannot upgrade summons, and I need to use a different summon for every major boss fight. Because I can only use one summon, I use the mod that allows me to call summons more than once as long as I have the FP. I also use the mod that allows me to summon in restricted areas. I am allowed to level up using whatever summons I choose, as well as the number of summons I gained. And lastly, I can assist my summons in any way I can. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you do, be sure to leave a like. First off, I made a Vagabond because I wanted to go for a Paladin role. I wanted to be a tank so I can be upfront taking aggro, and I could heal my summons to help them live longer. Afterwards, we met Ronnie and got the Spirit Calling Bell. I then ventured off and got the Rotten Stray Ash, and the Jellyfish Ash. Before I fought Margit, I wanted to gear myself a bit, so I farmed soldiers for a brass shield. I got the Bull Goat's Talisman that reduces poise damage taken by 25%. I then got the Green Talisman for the increased stamina recovery. After that, we went and killed the Tree Sentinel for some quick runes. The Rotten Stray is a strong summon because it procs the rot, which makes killing bosses with high HP fairly easy. I then got the Sacred Seal and both the Rejection and Healing Incantation, and now I was ready to fight Margit. My first summon of choice was the Spirit Jellyfish. My plan was to frontline and block any sorts of damage so that my Jellyfish could proc poison. But I came to realize that blocking the attacks only helped me and not my summons. I went in there thinking I could block some attacks so that they don't take damage at all. But clearly that's not the case. On top of that, the Spirit Jellyfish does no damage. The only reason why I chose the Spirit Jellyfish first is because I wanted to save the Rotten Stray for Godric. I know that I would struggle a lot if I didn't use the Rotten Stray against him. But since I knew the Spirit Jellyfish was not the play, I resorted to using the Rotten Stray. Thankfully, because of the rot, I slowly waited for Margit to die, and at last, Margit was defeated. And now my summons increased by 1. So now, I can use 2 summons. Before we fight Godric, I wanted to get the Banished Knight Oleg Ashes. You had to go through a dungeon and fight the Ulcerated Tree Spirit. But now that I have 2 Rotten Strays, this is going to be a piece of cake. We got Oleg and attempted to fight Godric. For the most part, it was going well. Oleg was doing some good damage, but it wasn't enough. Godric has multiple AoE moves, and since these guys aren't upgraded, they're not as tanky. Worst of all, I had limited resources, so I would barely get him to half health by using everything I had. I decided to switch summons and look for the Warhawk Ashes. Because the Warhawk is always flying, I thought it could dodge most of Godric's ground attacks. The Warhawks did pretty good damage. We even got to the second phase against Godric, but the limited resources was still a problem. I also felt that I needed to support my summons more aside from healing. I then went to Commander O'Neill for his weapon, the Commander's Standard. The weapon has a weapon skill that raises attack power and defense for self and allies. I thought this would be the perfect weapon to buff my summons. Unfortunately, he wasn't easy to kill. He would summon his own minions and it would outnumber the summons I had. So, instead of fighting him straight up, we just had to cheese our way to getting his weapon. After luring the commander to die from natural causes, we finally got his weapon. Except, in order to use the weapon skill, you need to have a stat of 25 strength and 14 dex. So, we went to the Night Cavalry and cheesed our way to get some quick runes. After we leveled up the required stats, we were still short on strength, so we picked up the Radagon Source Seal to increase our strength. We then picked up some Golden Seeds because we needed more flasks to stay in the fight longer. Now it's time to fight Godric. I went back to the Banished Knight Oleg Ashes because they're a little bit tankier than the Warhawks. We were doing a lot better than before, and thanks to the upgrades, we got Godric fairly low. But it was still not enough. I genuinely thought my run would be over really early in the game, but then I remembered you can skip Stormveil entirely and go straight to Liurnia, and so we did that. The plan is to defeat the Red Wolf so we can increase the summons, but before we fight him, I went and got the Cerulean Talisman for the increased FP. Afterwards, we went to the Red Wolf and used the Warhawk Ashes. There were a bit of close calls and a lot of dodging, but we killed the wolf and now our summons increased to 3. Now it was time to fight Godric. I went in using the Banished Knight Oleg Ashes, and since there were 3 of them, I felt pretty confident. Godric's health was going down pretty fast, but I was also running out of flasks as well. I had no more flasks, and I was down to my last summon. Thankfully, the boys toughed it out, and we finally beat Godric. Now, the next boss is Renala, but we have a problem. I totally forgot about our first phase. Although I could use Rejection on the mobs to make Renala fall, it would be almost impossible for the mobs to hit Renala. So I didn't bother fighting her and went elsewhere. But because I needed one more Great Rune to get into Leyndal, I thought real hard about who I was going to fight. So, I picked Mog because he's the easiest to cheese. But in order to get to Mog, we had to do the Vare quest. At some point in the quest, you have to go online, but thankfully there's an offline alternative. We also had to kill an invader, but I couldn't use summons in this area. Thankfully, he followed me off a cliff. What a nice guy. Afterwards, we made our way to Mogwin Palace. It does take a bit to cheese him, but once you enter the boss room, you quit the game and relog. Afterwards, you go to this cliff and jump all the way down. You climb the rocky parts and jump across. Once you're across, you go up this path and everything turns invisible. But it's alright. Make your way straight and go down this hole. Double jump from here and start attacking on Torrent. At the end, you will defeat Mog and get some free runes. Which we lost, but oh well. I was initially going to skip to Godfrey, but since we cheesed Mog, I made the Tree Sentinel the next required boss in order to progress. So, I got the Banished Knight Engvall Ashes and fought the Tree Sentinel. But it didn't work out. The Engvall Ashes weren't doing as much damage and the Tree Sentinel was doing a lot of damage. After dying a few times, I went and got the Bloodhound Knight Flow Ashes. I was going to save him for a different boss, but I was kind of struggling, so I went ahead and used them. The Flow Ashes are really good. They are very agile and they proc bleed. But because the Flow Ashes aren't as tanky and more of a glass cannon, they would die pretty fast. I needed them to proc bleed and just keep attacking. Thankfully, I was able to get a distance where it was safe enough for me to summon and allow the Flow Ashes to attack him freely. Finally, we took down this Tree Sentinel and we moved on to our next fight. Our next boss is Godfrey, and I read that his weakness was lightning attacks, so I got the Ancient Dragon Knight Ashes because he attacks with lightning and the spear is imbued with lightning. So I thought he would be perfect. Because we can have 5 summons, it was pretty funny seeing these guys cast lightning. Now that the number of summons increase, I don't need to do much. As long as I can summon and not die, then these fights would go smoothly. Up until now, I realized going the Vagabond class was pretty pointless, but oh well. The Kristoff Ashes made quick work of Godfrey, and now it's time for Morgoth. Initially, I was going to use the Flow Ashes against Morgoth, but since we used them, I used the Engvall Ashes in this fight. The Engvall Ashes were pretty good. They took a lot of hits and were able to do good damage, but since I tried to heal, I make a few mistakes. I thought it was time to get some new gear to help me out a bit. I went and found some Sacred Tears to increase my flask so I don't waste the flask trying to summon. I then got an Tree Favor for the increased stats, and I re-attempted Morgoth. The run went pretty well. The Engvall Ashes were spinning and jumping around. I try to go in the right times to heal them, and I kept a distance so I don't needlessly die. After a long battle, the Engvall Ashes beat Morgoth, and we get to fight our next boss, the Fire Giant. Now, I thought real hard on who I could use to beat the Fire Giant, and I found that the Ancestral Followers would be a good choice. The long range from their bow would be perfect against a giant target. It is what I thought, but it didn't work out as well as I thought. Their base damage is okay, but it was hard to position them to keep attacking from afar. At this point, I was kinda getting worried because there were a select few ashes I wanted to save for the harder bosses, and I was beginning to think that I needed to use one of them. But thanks to YouTube, I found some cheats to help me with this boss. First, we got the Latenna Ashes. And since we can summon up to 7 ashes, I knew this would be pretty fun. In order for this to work, we had to lure the Fire Giant to this area, and once he starts attacking, we jump off the cliff and wait for him to come to this area. Once he's there, we run to this area and place the ashes here. The Latenna Ashes are pretty good because they can act as an arrow artillery, and since there's 7 of them, we got some DPS going. Once everything's set, we just wait by this tree and watch the magic happen. Once we get into a second phase, you just repeat the process and voila, the Fire Giant is down. I never thought I would use this summon at all, but I'm glad I used it this run, because the video I watched showed me a guy using only one, and yeah, that must have taken forever. But anyways, now it's time to fight one of the bosses I have been waiting for this entire run, and I have the perfect ash to use against them. Next, we're fighting the Godskin duo. If you saw my last video, we suffered quite a bit, but since we have 8 summons right now, I know this fight is gonna be fun to watch. The next summon we're getting is the Black Flame Monk. I thought it would be perfect to use against the duo. Once we got the Black Flame Monk, it was time to roll. I'll be honest, I was expecting the damage to go down like crazy, but for what it's worth, it is still pretty fast. Plus, this guy kept following me, which was a good thing since the summons can solo the other guy. It did get hectic because once someone starts using a spell, I can't tell whose is who. Although it took a bit longer than I expected, it was still satisfying destroying them. The next boss is Malekith, and since this guy moves around a lot, I thought it would be best to deal a lot of damage as fast as we can. So we got the Omen Killer Ashes. These bad boys can proc some big bleed, and that's exactly what we need. The plan is to make sure these guys proc as much bleed as they can because the summoning animations take quite a bit. And if Malekith starts running towards you, you're basically dead. We were doing some big damage, but the little mistakes really cost the runs. Because being a tank hasn't helped the summons, I decided to change some gear. I took off the armor and wore the greatest equip ever. Alright, look, I know it's a dress, but it makes me light. And this dress lets me heal my summons by 2 HP every second. Hey, 2 HP is better than 0. So we finally confront Malekith again, and after some close calls, the man, the myth, the legend, the single Omen Killer took down Malekith with 1 strike. And now we hit the limit for how many summons we can have. I've tested a bit and I can't go more than 10 summons. I'm not sure why, but going over 10 is beyond my expertise, but nonetheless, this is gonna be crazy. With 3 more bosses remaining, our next boss is Sir Gideon. Now, this guy isn't that impressive at all, but he is surprisingly strong. When I fought him the last time, I kind of deleted him, but now I'm getting deleted. So, I went and got the Red Mage Knight ashes and we just mowed him down with arrows. It was pretty funny because he was trying to dodge everything, and it seemed like this guy had unlimited stamina or something. Like, bro, how many times are you gonna dodge? After a good bit of dodging the arrows, we finally defeated him, and now comes Godfrey. For this boss, I thought using the Lutel ashes were perfect, but a 0 upgrade ash is definitely not the best. I was expecting Lutel to just split apart and use the teleport to dodge the attacks, but clearly the AI isn't built that way. So we got our smelly friend, the Dung Eater Puppet. Okay, but that's a weird name. Anyways, this guy can take some hard hits, and the Dung Eater can proc some good bleeds. Plus, he shoots out these fart attacks. Pretty nice. The biggest issue with this fight is Godfrey's massive AoE ground pound. He uses it so frequently that I have to play when's the best time to summon. Because there isn't. I just tank hits and summon them. Godfrey was almost dead, and as I was trying to get the summon off, he starts chasing me down. I started to panic roll and I died. But the next attempt, we looked him straight in the eye and faced him head on. And just as he was going to use his annoying ground pound, the Stinky Boys came up on top. With that, we only got one more boss. Now, I'm super excited because for this one, we're using my favorite ash. But before we continue the video, we got a problem. I was going to use the Black Knife ashes because I thought that 10 of them would go crazy. And plus, I can't make 10 mimics, so we took them out. But for some reason, I can't use summons in a specific area. So basically, there's no means for me to get her. Now, I try to finish this run using the Clean Rot Knights, and we got the first phase down. But the stinking Elden Beast has high holy resistance, and we basically did no damage. So, because I started this video to showcase the sheer power of 10 Black Knife Tiches, I'm gonna pop that summon in my inventory, and we're gonna enjoy the show. Cause let me just say this, it's about to be crazy, so buckle up. Oh jeez, oh. Yeah, that was nuts. The sheer damage 10 Tiches can do is actually crazy. Okay, let's see what happens here. Bro, that wasn't even a minute. That was less than a minute. Huh? Huh? And as an added bonus, let's see how they go against Melania. Okay, look, I'm pretty sure everyone's curious. Alright, hold up. Melania? Okay, come on. Oh my. Oh. Well, that's not good. Because she started hitting them. Okay, well, they do absurd amount of damage, but she heals like crazy. Okay, hey, let's not do this. Melania? Okay, Melania. Bro, that's insane! The way it just melts her health. Okay. Okay, let me live. Good dodge. I'm out, boys. Okay, so everyone's dead. Now I'm gonna bring her back. There we go. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, that was actually insane.